And of course, surprising no one, Ray Epps, the man who claims to have orchestrated January 6 and incited people to storm the Capitol, has received no jail time. That's right. None. He was sentenced to 1 year probation with no travel restrictions and a $500 fine. He's going to have to do some community service. But oh boy, what an interesting story. What an interesting story about January 6th. A man who was accused of being a Fed on January 5th by the crowd, who is on camera instructing people, guiding people, and advocating for going into the Capitol, gets one of the lightest sentences we've seen. I have met people, and I have seen stories, and I have talked with lawyers of January 6 protesters, as well as innocent tourists who received more jail time than Ray Epps. There's stories of people who showed up hours later. If you take a look at Dinesh D'Souza's film, Police State, there's a woman who says that her son showed up like an hour after everything had already happened, was walking around, didn't matter. And now we're hearing from the DOJ, they will begin prosecutions of those who were outside and never went in the building. Now, it's already true. They've prosecuted some people in this case. Owen Schroyer, for instance, never went inside the building. Brandon Strzok, of course, never went inside the building. But now they're saying that there were thousands of people standing around outside the Capitol in an unauthorized area. And these individuals now face criminal prosecution. Ladies and gentlemen, Vivek Ramaswamy made the point on a CNN town hall that January 6 appears to be an inside job. Well, I'm sorry to say that he is wrong because January 6 was an inside job. Okay, he's mostly correct. I'm just being pedantic. For that point, CNN tries to claim it's false. I will debunk CNN. And oh boy, CNN, I hope you're ready for this one. So word is we're doing, tomorrow, we are doing our podcast town hall style event with Vivek Ramaswamy in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm hearing there's very serious inclement weather, so I'm quite worried because we got to fly in at night, and hopefully everything works out. Otherwise, it is what it is. It's very, very expensive for us to pull this off. We may have a sponsor, so we're really excited, but we'll see how it plays out. But we'll be doing this event, and well, the word is several members of the press would like to attend. Oh yes, CNN included. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this one. Let me break it down for you in this segment as we talk about Ray Epps and what it truly means for there to be an inside job. The Post-Millennial reports. Ray Epps, the man who claimed to have orchestrated the events of January 6, has been sentenced to a year of probation for his actions. According to the AP, Epps will have to serve 100 hours of community service, but no restrictions were placed on his travel during his probation sentence. Epps also received a $500 fine. Epps appeared remotely for the Washington, D.C. hearing in which Chief Judge James Boasberg sentenced him. Apparently, he's also got 100 hours of community service. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew from Don't Walk Run says, Democrats, Trump told his insurrectionist followers to go into the Capitol. He never did. Also, Democrats, yes, Ray Epps told people to go into the Capitol, but so what? Stop making this political. Leave him alone. Here's the clip for those that never saw it.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol.
What?
No! Peacefully. Fed. Tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go. I'll say it.
All right.
We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Based Fed posting? All right.
Go into the Capitol. Ray Epps said he knew he would be arrested for saying it. Yet here we are, ladies and gentlemen. He knew he'd be arrested for saying it, and he said it anyway. And it's fascinating to me, and it's actually quite heartbreaking that so many people saw this man and screamed Fed over and over again at him because they knew this was a setup. Yet still, some of these individuals went inside the Capitol. Why would you do it? You're standing there. You and many others are screaming Fed at this guy, knowing you should not go in the Capitol. And then you do. I think the reality is most people on January 6th, the overwhelming majority, I think there's been like 1,700 convictions. Most people who were there, because hundreds of thousands of people went to D.C. on January 6th, oh, so many years ago, 3 years ago. There were people walking around the Capitol grounds, not doing anything. There were many people who walked up after the barricades had been removed and were just standing on the sidewalk and went nowhere near the building. They're going to be arrested and charged too. Some of these people who showed up and were just walking around walked up to the building after the riots as the police opened the doors and fanned them in, and had no idea there was any kind of riot at all. In fact, Brandon Strzok, this was a point that he made on the show, that he was on the other side of the building. He had no idea violence or fighting was happening. He thought people were just standing there. He didn't realize. And there are many people that I've spoken with who said they did not understand what happened with the violence on one side when they were on the other. The police opened the door, let them in, and now the Democrats have weaponized this against everybody. I'd like to take this opportunity to debunk CNN's garbage lies and point out January 6th was an inside job. Come at me, bros. I'm going to debunk CNN right here in real time using the dictionary. And you're going to love this. Using CNN as a source, I will debunk CNN. So come at me, bros. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow at our podcast-style town hall-like hybrid event. Only 50 tickets available. It's all being set up now. It's going to be really fun. We're flying tonight. Hopefully, we do not get stopped by inclement weather. CNN wrote this December 13th. Fact-checking Vivek Ramaswamy's CNN town hall in Iowa. A false claim that police rolled out the red carpet on January 6th. Let's just start right here. What does it mean to roll out the red carpet? Well, that's a figure of speech, okay? And it could mean a lot of things. It could mean that the police opened the doors in fear and panic, and he's just being facetious. It could mean that the police actually rolled out a red carpet. Oh, is that the game? False. Police did not unfurl a red carpet onto the ground for which J6ers could walk. No, Vivek is correct. The police opened the doors. That's it. Let me read. They say, Ramaswamy doubled down on his previous comments. The January 6th attack on the inside Capitol was an inside job. Now, hold on there a gosh darn minute. He said it appears to be. Anyway, adding there is evidence of police rolling out the red carpet for rioters and inviting them in. There is. CNN is the source for this, mind you. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to double down and find another source. And not just, I have one source pulled up. I'm going to pull up a secondary source. Here we go. We'll pull this one. We'll grab this one. Man who said January 6th was magical, acquitted in U.S. Capitol riot case. Okay, but let's go back. Inviting them in. Facts first. Ramaswamy's claim that the rioters were invited to the Capitol is false. According to CNN, this man, his name was Matthew Martin, was found not guilty on 4 federal misdemeanors related to trespassing. Martin, who worked for a government contractor before his arrest following the riot, successfully argued that a U.S. Capitol police officer waved him into the building. At least one video played during the trial appeared to show an officer moving his arm in a waving motion. A court has adjudicated this claim. Now, I like to play. I like to be. I'm a reasonable guy, right? So if you see on video a guy waving someone, and I'll be like, let's see how the courts handle this. CNN. This story that you published, Andrew Millman, April 6th, 2022, was a year and a half, almost 2 years before you falsely claimed CNN staff, no byline. Look at that. Do they put a byline? Okay, here we go. Marshall Cohen and Kanita Iyer lied. And CNN allowed this to be published. I'd like to give a shout out to our good friends over at NewsGuard for doing the right thing and knocking CNN down a peg. Wait, what? They're only getting hit because they don't label advertising? But this is egregious false information. The claim that rioters were invited to the Capitol is false. About 140 officers were assaulted while trying to stop the mob from breaching the Capitol. There were hours-long battles between police and rioters near some entrances. CNN obtained footage from police body-worn cameras showing how desperate dozens of officers were. There are plenty of instances where rioters waltzed into the Capitol without a fight, but only after they had stormed past barricades and in some cases even stepped through broken windows. In some areas, police were so outnumbered by the mob, they retreated, stood aside, or tried to politely engage with rioters to de-escalate the situation rather than fighting or making arrests. I got to stop you there, CNN. According to a judge in your own reporting, he agreed with the man who said the police invited him in. So CNN, where do we defer when it comes to matters of fact? Evidence was presented in court. A judge made a determination. Therefore, there are instances, and this one guy's not the only one, but let's say there is an instance where these people were invited in. How could CNN claim otherwise? Interesting. A false claim about government entrapment. Ramaswamy reiterated his belief that January 6th was an instance of government entrapment, claiming as evidence that we know there were federal law enforcement agents in that field. They say FBI Director Christopher Wray, a lifelong Republican appointed by Trump, which means nothing, by the way, there's no reason to include that, has repeatedly rejected claims that federal law enforcement agents were in any way responsible for the violence. They didn't even fact check. Claim. Ramaswamy says federal law enforcement agents were in the field. True or false? The actual statement from Wray was, I cannot confirm or deny. CNN is redirecting and saying Wray claims they weren't responsible for the violence. It almost sounds like a tacit confirmation federal law enforcement agents were in the field. Okay. Wray has resisted attempts by the GOP, et cetera, so fine. If Ramaswamy says it was government entrapment because agents were in that field, that's a bold claim, but he never said they were responsible for the violence. Weird thing to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you the definition here of the phrase inside job. A crime committed by or with the assistance of a person living or working on the premises where it occurred. All right, now let's jump over to our good friends over at CNN. Here's a man who's walking around who told a judge he was invited in, and the judge agreed. U.S. Capitol Police waved him into the building. Well, let's try this again. Martin, who worked for a government contractor, successfully argued that a U.S. Capitol Police officer waved him in. At least one video played in the trial appeared to show an officer moving his arm in a waving motion. A judge agreed. The cop waved him in. Now, you may be arguing that, as many on the left do, they were waving other cops in. Let me give a shout out to our good friend Destiny, the omni-liberal. Destiny, I make no determination. You can make the argument that you believe the intent of the cop was to fan in other cops. Maybe they've stated as such. But that is not material to the question of adjudication. The police officers may or may not have been waving in protesters or police. To determine would require us to read the mind of the officer. All we can do is determine the appearance and what the court finds to be reasonable. The judge found it reasonable to argue that the police officer's waving motion was waving people into the building. Now, perhaps the officer's intent was not to invite them into the building, but they were. Let's try another way. In a bank, bank robbers go to the back door. A security guard opens the door and then in a waving motion is waving in, and these guys enter the building, rob the bank, and leave. That's called an inside job, by definition. Let me read the definition for you one more time. A crime committed by or with the assistance of a person living or working on the premises where it occurred. What the left and the Democrats are trying to do is change the definition of inside job and take the most extreme interpretation, that the White House orchestrated the entire events. The definition of inside job is not that the person working inside was in collusion with the criminals. It says with the assistance of. Yes, unwitting assistance is still an inside job. A police officer opening a door and waving, which results in the reasonable interpretation they are being invited in. Police officers taking selfies with people and shaking their hands. And how about the most egregious? Let's see if I can find a CNN source for this. Shaman, cops, J6. Let's try CNN. QAnon shaman sentenced. Yeah, I didn't think CNN would actually report correctly on this. But CNN's not going to give us the source because they're liars. But I will pull up the New York Post. Here you are, my friends. J6 footage shows Capitol cops escorting QAnon shaman to the Senate floor. The instances of individuals working on the premises providing assistance to those who were later convicted of crimes, it is copious, for which we can say definitively and confirmed in a court of law, January 6th was an inside job. Thank you and have a nice day. But don't take my word for it, ladies and gentlemen. How about CNN and MSNBC's own statements? CNN reports Joe Scarborough lambasts Capitol Police. You opened the effing doors for them. Okay, well, hold on. Is CNN going to debunk this claim from Joe Scarborough? Or are they going to just publish his statements, allowing him to either lie, or is it because it's true? The police opened the door for them. Okay, well, here's the reality. It has already been adjudicated in a court of law that this was an inside job by definition. That's it. A judge has already agreed. There have been other instances of individuals who have been acquitted on trespassing charges for this reason, though some individuals also got multiple charges. Some people have had charges of trespassing and vandalism, and they said, okay, trespassing is out, but we're going to charge you with other things. In this instance that I brought up, the guy was totally acquitted on every charge because the cop found him in the building. The morning after rioters violently stormed the Capitol, Morning Joe co-host Joe Scarborough passionately reprimanded Capitol Police and said Trump should be sent to jail today. Scarborough, former Florida congressman, expressed rage. Trump supporters come in and you open the effing doors for them? You open the doors for them and let them breach the people's house? The Capitol Police assisted the rioters? Why, that's the definition of an inside job. Funny. The Morning Joe co-host lambasted them. They politely, they quote, politely opening the door for terrorists who had scrawled on the door, murder the media, he added. Wow. 4 people died during the chaos. Yes, but, not police, and they were killed likely by police or trampled. According to Washington Metro, 1 woman was shot by a U.S. Capitol Police officer. 3 other people had medical emergencies. Trump is to blame, Scarborough said. He's an insurrectionist. There's no question he should be arrested today. This is from January 7th, 2021. He's an insurrectionist. There are no questions. He should be arrested today. By all means, you can have that opinion. I'm not here to argue that one. We can argue that one later. I'm here to point out it is confirmed, according to CNN sources, literally the day after January 6th. I don't see Alexis Benveniste challenging Joe Scarborough's claims and calling him a liar because he was telling the truth. Joe Scarborough was telling the truth. The police opened the doors for them. This we know. This we know. Ray Epps, no jail time. Let me pull up this clip from where we have Destiny right here. Destiny, the omni-liberal, says, you can't compare January 6th to 1,000 BLM protests because there wasn't a coherent plot with BLM to overthrow the effing government to keep the president in power, dip-ish. Well, with respect to Destiny, the reason he's saying the cuss at the end is because the guy called him the same cuss. My response. Actually, I'd say it's the other way around. Now, clarifying, I don't necessarily mean BLM. But I would say you can't compare January 6th to all of the far left extremist protests, because with the far left extremist protests, you actually have dozens of coherent plots to overthrow the government. I say with far left tactics pertaining to May 29th, there absolutely were coherent plots to overthrow the government, a few dozen coherent plots among smaller groups. If the argument is that leftist attacks were bad plans doomed to fail, the same could be said of January 6th. Either they are both insurrections or neither was. If both were, then the Biden administration and Kamala specifically need to be challenged on their financial support for insurrectionists through bail funds. If you want to make the argument that it's not an insurrection, that a bunch of people protested the Capitol, unarmed, by the way, there were some people outside with guns, but I think it's in the single digits. But either way, some people are armed sometimes. There was no armed effort to overthrow the U.S. government. Occupying a building in D.C. does not give you control of the government. So try again. So we can argue, however, if Destiny wants to say that because there was an effort by these individuals to disrupt the proceeding and keep Trump in power, I don't think there was. I think the logic doesn't follow. But if that's the case, far left groups, and we know this, have expressed their intent to overthrow and dismantle the United States. You had the Gravel Institute cheering on the attack on January 6th, but not for the people who did it. The Gravel Institute tweeted that it was a good thing they stormed the Capitol, but it was the wrong people who did. Okay. Many people on the left celebrated and called for the overthrowing of the U.S. government. Decolonization, for instance, is an expression of their intent. Now, if you want to talk about coherent plots to overthrow the government, they certainly do exist, but we must speculate in much the same way we did for the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Are there definitive statements among the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers outlining a plan to overthrow the government? There are not. However, there was a legal strategy for a contingent election by Mike Pence rejecting the electoral vote counts from certain states. But that does not connect the riot with the legal strategy. So you can argue the legal strategy was an attempt to remain in power. You can argue that the riots were an insurrection, but you can't argue they were connected. As for the far left, these people often on social media advocate for overthrowing the U.S., and they talk about their plans to do so and what it means to gain that control. Their plans are stupid and they often fail, much like January 6th. Kamala Harris and the Biden administration, not Biden directly, but the Biden administration had staff members funding the legal efforts of the people who were rioting during this period around May 29th. Kamala Harris directly donated herself. You had people like Maxine Waters calling for the far left to get in people's faces, advocating for violent actions and defending their actions. Okay. If you don't want to compare BLM to J6, fine. But the far left as a whole, there are numerous smaller scale, more decentralized plots to overthrow the government. That's a fact. During Occupy Wall Street, they talked about it all the time. Just because their plans are stupid doesn't change the fact that the plans exist. And therein lies the big issue. We did not get a hearing or evidence on May 29th. Where all the evidence they've brought up over January 6th, fine, so be it. How have we not gotten hearings on May 29th? There's no argument. You can't come to me and say, well, the only reason there was violence on May 29th was because the cops started it. It's meaningless. You could argue the cops started January 6th. Then you say, no, but they stormed the barricades. They stormed the barricades in front of the White House. The police responded. Either way, it's meaningless. The evidence you have on J6 comes from these committee hearings and investigations. We never got those for May 29th. So what we can only say is that the question of deeper investigation is not material to the point of what we witnessed on both days. If January 6th was an insurrection, so was May 29th. An argument could be made that Democrat leadership was deeply involved in the organizing of these protests. I'm not going to play a bias game. Trump was an insurrectionist? Okay. Well, I mean, so was the Democratic Party leadership. Maybe not Biden directly, but yes. Democrat activists who work within the political system and the DNC who overlap with these NGOs and engage in calls for action. Come on. I'm not playing these games. As for now, what can be said? January 6th was an inside job. It's definitive. There's no question. It was legally adjudicated. A judge determined police officers assisted in people coming into the building, and it's been adjudicated in the media, which is informal. But Joe Scarborough and CNN have admitted this fact. Video exists showing a cop waving people in. A judge thought so. Spare me your dirty games. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.